trying to see if I can remember some of the thoughts I had last night. I was thinking about how when I had a panic attack, the experience was sort of like kind of understood, what dying felt like. And death, the fear of death is, different, than what actually, than like the physical body, like ceasing to function. But so all, so the death is really something that the ego is afraid of. And it's not so much concerned with the death of the body, though it will try to defend the body as long as it believes the body serves the ego. But the ego is more concerned with its own survival, which is somewhat ironic because the ego in itself has no life to begin with, but it's in constant sort of conflict with the prime self, because it sort of like looks at the prime self and it says that's not real. I'm real. I'm you. Your arm moves and it says I'm the one who made that arm move. I mean, the reality of it is, the thought that came after the fact of the movement is not, what made the arm move. What made the arm move was, the current of life, and, there's no, rationale, that makes things happen in the world. The rationale is used to explain things sort of after the fact. And that's sort of like the realm in which the ego exists. But the ego, it's sort of, it's the thing that tells you to be afraid, afraid of its destruction, but it's not telling you that it's afraid of its destruction. It presents the case to you in the first person point of view, saying, you're afraid of your own destruction, I'm afraid that I will die, that's sort of like the ego telling you, like, hey, be afraid that I will die. And so my experience kind of this, this panic attack was that of feeling completely separate from everything in the world, completely isolated into like a state of being where I felt like I couldn't see, I couldn't speak, I couldn't hear, I couldn't communicate with anyone around me. And I was like locked in a straitjacket of darkness. And there was like no way of, asking for help or communicating, with the outside world, because somehow I had slipped into like some kind of pit of darkness where nothing could reach me. And so it was like this ultimate state of separation from the life force in the universe. And it was really challenging to my nervous system because I started having these seizures and convulsions. So, and that, last night I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about how hell is created. Because the ego is so afraid of its own death that instead of allowing the spirit to be set free, when the body dies, it's sort of in order to survive, it cuts that whatever bit of life that is in you that is left, that still hangs on as an individual self. It tries to latch onto that life that is remaining, and it starts screaming and roaring about how you're dead now and you're in hell. And so, the spirit never dies. But in order to frighten the spirit into continuing to feed the ego life, the ego sort of wraps itself around the spirit and says, now you've died. Now you're in hell. And now you're in hell, here in hell with me forever. And so the spirit is wrapped up in this voice that continues to tell it, you're deaf, dumb, and blind. You're in the void. You can't touch anything. You're completely alone. This is what death is. And so because the ego fears death so much, because without life feeding it, essentially the ego doesn't exist. So what the ego does, it tries to capture us and put us into this isolated state of hell where it's like you're like living in a cabin out in the middle of nowhere with some madman who just runs his mouth all the time. And now you can't get out because it's in the middle of winter, and everything is, there's 20 feet of snow blocking the door. And that's sort of like what hell is like. And it's funny, whenever you're going through these experiences, they don't seem very, they're so fucking painful and frightening that there's no way that you would like willingly choose to have that experience. But this is, sort of, another point to it that I came up with is it's kind of like, that's why part of the how the shadow serves us, because the shadow sort of recruits us into doing things that are, we have to do it. We have to create the circumstances in our life to have certain experiences that we can learn from that we would not consciously choose. If we knew like what kind of pain awaited us if we walked down that road, we would not go down that road. But in hindsight, all the experiences that I've had, all of the negative ones, that would be considered extremely negative, when I've been able to go back and meditate on the feelings and sort of allow those feelings to merge with me, I would not trade those experiences. Those were strengthening experiences. Like, those things have showed me what is possible, and what my powers are, and how to use wisdom, to wield all of myself, and where I'm not like cutting part of myself off and delegating it onto people who I want to have adversarial relationships with. Instead of that, I'm able to take that person that I've projected on the outside, and I can now harness what it is that they know, and I can use it in a responsible and wise way. So, the dark arts, there are only the dark arts in an unbalanced individual who does not use discernment to apply them correctly. When you have both the light and the dark, and you lead with the light and allow the darkness inside of you to serve the light, the darkness, is dispelled. and you know how to move and operate in a world that's dangerous, and to use the things in this world, not only for what is best for you, but best for everyone, concerned, essentially, because you don't really have any enemies in this world. There's people who will put themselves in your way, and the unfortunate reality is that those people will need to be dealt with if push comes to shove. But it's not out of like some feeling of malice. It's just like you have to put them aside and take them out of your way, because they're threatening life, and what's best is that they go away. Anyhow, so yeah, my main thing that I wanted to say here was that the ego, in order to survive, it will put you in like a cage of hell that it says you can't get out of this. You're stuck in here, you're in prison, you're isolated, you're completely alone. No, not even God can reach you down here. And so having had an experience that is similar to this, it's taught me more about myself, and it's given me a greater appreciation for life, and somehow I feel more whole as a human being. It's like ripping that wound open and seeing that so clearly. It sort of like took sort of like broke some old bones in me, but they kind of had to break in so that they could be put back into the correct place, so that they could grow back more healthy. Because often when we're traumatized, we do the best our can to cope with it. So like our strategies are usually like from an immature state, when we didn't really have the wisdom. But later on, like if we sort of reface old trauma, and we have a better discernment, and we can intentionally look at the subject because we have more courage and more experience, then we can heal old wounds because we have more tools now available to us, like emotional intelligence, to make the wound heal more the proper way that we want it to. Anyhow, just wanted to share that. You guys have a good one.